Hi there, welcome to the Thriving on Purpose broadcast. My name is Elizabeth Richard.
And I'm Sebastian Richard, and we're both certified John Maxwell team coaches and Christian coaches. And we're so happy you joined us today because today's a special broadcast. We're going to be talking about the leadership dance. And that's a term I heard John Maxwell talk about a little while ago. And it was so insightful. And I thought, yeah, that's the way it works. That's just the way it is. It's like a dance. You have to flow and you have to dance and move smoothly. And we're going to see what that entails actually during this broadcast.
So we're just going to record.
Yeah. So we're just going to record this podcast on the leadership dance. I just forgot to press record.
So we're learning as we go.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, we noticed that last time we had some bad audio going, so we're trying to correct that. So for future podcasts, we're going to have better sound quality, hopefully. Okay, so the leadership dance. What exactly is the leadership dance? Well, when you have the privilege of leading people, when God puts you in a position where you are blessed enough to have people who are willing to follow you, you have to know how to dance. And what do I mean by that? Is you have to know the leadership dance. All successful leaders know the leadership dance, whether consciously or unconsciously. Because you cannot be a successful leader unless you know how to dance, how to be a smooth dancer in the leadership dance. So a leader who knows the leadership dance and successfully dances will avoid conflict and drama. That's one thing. Number two, he's going to empower the people on his team. Number three, and very important, he's going to avoid energy depletion. And we're going to see all this as we see the leadership dance. Number four, he's going to get results faster. So the leader who's good at dancing is going to get results faster. Number five, he's going to solidify his leadership and influence. And number six, and that's so important, he's going to win the hearts of those he leads.
And so this podcast is a very good topic for parents that are leading their children and also for people that are building a team. So whether you're in network marketing or direct sales, you're building a team, you'll want to get these points because it's absolutely essential when you're building a team.
Absolutely. And it is also applicable to leaders who are positional leaders who are trying to be good positional leaders. So if you're working in a company and you have a department under you, you're going to have to be a good dancer as well. The position doesn't make the leader makes the position. So successful dancing is all about rhythm, timing, and flow. And notice how successful leadership is also about rhythm, timing, and flow. So the leadership dance is very similar to actual dancing. So the way we wrote this down is fun because it's really about, when you're following a dance course, when you're learning to dance, they tell you how to step. One step behind, one step beside. So that's the way we phrased it here. So number one of the leadership dance is one step in front. One step in front. So what do we mean by that? Well, as a leader, sometimes you will be called to take the lead. So you'll be one step in front of your team, showing the way, going the way, doing the thing, and showing how it's done and getting them to follow you in the vision, the project, what you're trying to implement for your team. So we've all heard this, or maybe some of you have heard this. A boss says, go. A leader says, hey, let's go.
Yeah, so especially when you're team building, you want to be that example of what a leader should do. So you want to mimic what that looks like for the person. You want to show them what that looks like, but at the same time, you don't want them to feel that you're so like you're 20 steps ahead and that they can't follow you and that then that's just going to make them feel overwhelmed and discouraged and kind of want to give up, right? But if you're always at a pace, and that's why they call it the leadership dance, you're always moving forward, but you're like saying, come on with me. I'm going to help you. I'm going to, be there for you as we do this together. So you're moving, you're doing that action step. And so I've seen many, many times in network marketing, the opposite. I've seen leaders, recruit a lot, not train their people in how to do that themselves. And so the people just stay and look and go, well, I guess I'm just not a good recruiter. I'm not a good salesperson. I just can't do this.
Maybe I'm not cut out for this.
And they stick around just because they want to be part of the team and feel like this kinship with everybody. But in reality, they're like, I can never be like that leader, because they're like driving a Ferrari and I'm still in my little Toyota trying to catch up, right?
Yeah, and that's figurative, and also it's realistic, because when you're one step, like she said, one step ahead, people see you. You're not like 5 miles ahead where they lose sight of you and they're like, what do I do? They're eating your dust and they just don't know what they're doing. Like you're the road runner and they're just trying to catch up. You don't want your team to play catch up. You want to be just one step ahead so they can follow one step at a time. So one step in front. Number 2, Liz.
So the number 2 is step beside. Participate, listen, and even get your hands dirty.
So what do we mean by that? So when you step beside a leader, you're walking alongside your team members. So you're in this together. And that's something we hear a lot these days, right? We're in it together. But when you're leading, sometimes you're called to go one step ahead. Most times as a leader, you'll be one step ahead. But sometimes your team will need you to be
right next to them.
Right next to them. So you're going to be stepping beside them, walking with them, participating, listening. And what she's meant by get your hands dirty, I like a leader who's willing to get his hands dirty. And I was raised a blue collar. Okay, so since my youth, just recently I became an official quote unquote white collar, but that was like 7 months ago. And now I'm a full-time white collar, but I've always had a foot in the blue collar world. And what I loved from my leaders in the blue collar world were those who were willing to get their hands dirty. And I remember one in particular. I was about, I must have been maybe 19 or 20 years old. And my mom had gotten me a job where she worked. And I was working in the warehouse in the back. And I was working with this man. And he was a tremendous leader. And it's funny because the guy had this blue collar job, 9 to 5. He didn't even manage the warehouse. He just did a job in the warehouse. But I was to be trained by him. And what was so great about this man is he was tremendously patient. He explained to me every step of the way, and he got his hands dirty. We were doing the same work. So we had these orders coming in, and I had to go pick the materials, and he did the same thing as I did. And so I could look and compare and see, am I doing this right? Ask him stuff. He would just, whisper, say, yeah, you're doing great. That's awesome. That's the way we do it. Oh, here, you should do it a little differently. So he was getting his hands dirty. He was manipulating the stuff, doing the work that I was doing. I was sweating, he was sweating. And that made me admire him so much. I was like, there's a guy who's got 20 years on me in experience doing this job, and yet he's not afraid to do what I'm doing just to show me how it's done. So he wasn't afraid to step down a little bit and walk beside me for this time where I was learning everything and just do it with me. So we were doing the same work together. And for me, that left a lasting impression. And you know what? I was willing to sweat and bleed for that guy just because he was willing to do that for me. I was willing to give it back, and I did.
Yeah, in a great way right now, since everybody's confined at home for work, everybody's, discovering the digital world and how to use Zoom and how to use the internet to basically show how to do things. And I think that's a great thing, because that can show, you can take that time to say, how can I show this team member how I do things? What does my daily method of operation look like? What do I do, when I'm talking to somebody, when I'm talking to a potential customer or client? and show them the process of what it is like to look in on what you're doing so that they can actually learn. Because a lot of people learn through watching others.
Yeah.
And, sometimes even in, business settings, people tell you what to do and they expect you to know what that looks like. And so that's a really great idea now that we have Zoom. We can record ourselves doing certain calls, certain activities, and show our team members what that looks like on a daily basis and how you do it, what you say, what you don't say. Do some role playing with your team members so that they can really have a clear example of what that looks like.
And the philosophy of the step aside is a great leader will never ask someone to do something they're not willing to do themselves. Mm-hmm. So if you do it yourself, that really proves that you're an adequate leader, that you're not telling them BS, but that you're actually willing to do that same thing that you're telling them to do.
Yeah, and sometimes we need that clarity. I've had some really good conversations with some mentors that have really poured into me and have given me great examples of different things that they did in their home business and what they say to customers, what they say to clients. And sometimes I'm just like, wow, like I never thought to say a certain thing that way on this kind of topic. Yeah. And so, doing that role playing, what do you say when the person objects to this or says that, or, you give them examples and they're able to take that time. Well, that gives you a tremendous amount of clarity so that you can say, okay, now I know what to do when this problem arises, right?
And it's funny you mentioned that because Christians, a lot of them, maybe 20 years ago, there was this craze of WWJD bracelets. What would Jesus do bracelets?
Yeah. And
the power behind those bracelets is so simple. It's like our leader was willing to do these things. When he said love one another, he did it. He exemplified every single thing. So he was, and by the way, Jesus exemplifies all 4 steps we're going to talk about today. He did all of them. But that particular one is very powerful and potent when it's put in practice by the leader.
Exactly. And that brings us to number 3, one step behind. So to empower, encourage initiative to step up.
So first we had one step in front, second step beside, and now we have one step behind. See, as you guide your team into your vision of what needs to be done, eventually they're starting to get on their own, okay? So you have to get behind them and encourage them and empower them with your words, with your encouragement, with adding value to them, with providing them what they need to get the job done, whether it's knowledge or sometimes equipment. But whatever it is they need, you make sure they get it. So the one step behind is the leader starting slowly to step a little behind. So he was in front of the beginning, then step beside, so you're participating. Then you step behind a little bit and you let them go while still coaching and guiding. And of course, good leaders are good motivators. They're good encouragers, and they know how to empower their team. That is so, so crucial. See, if you're going to be a good leader, you're going to need, for every word or for every criticism you give someone, you need to have given them 4 or 5 words of affirmation or positive affirmations. Reinforcement. So make sure that dosage is adequate if you're going to lead one step behind. Because if you're going to empower them, in other words, give them the power to move forward because you're behind them, you're like that fuel behind them, that's only going to be done if for every word of criticism, they have 4 to 5 words of affirmation. Well done. Thanks. Hey, thanks it's just one syllable. Thanks. It's so short, but it can go a long way, that word. And oftentimes leaders neglect to say it. The bad ones, I mean.
To take the time to say, I really appreciate what you just did.
Absolutely.
That saves me time, or that makes my life easier. Or that shows great initiative. I really appreciate you stepping up and doing this, even if I didn't ask you to do it.
Yes, or saying, well done. I would not have thought to do it that way. Mm-hmm. See, that's another thing you can say to your team members. I wouldn't have thought of doing it that way. Or what a great idea. or wow, that's a great way to show initiative. There's so many things you can tell people who work with you to encourage them and empower them and give them that fuel to keep moving forward and to be motivated.
Yeah, because you want to build their confidence. If you want to get to the part where you have total freedom, which is the last step, you have to be able to encourage them and motivate them to become confident. So to build their confidence is what they need at this stage. So you went from, showing the way to doing it with them. Okay. And then now you're stepping back and saying, look, I'm uplifting you. I'm giving you that confidence that you need so that you can show up. Because at one point you'll realize that, sometimes when we stay too long behind our leader, we kind of freeze there and we're not in an action step of everything that we've learned. So that's really the confidence part comes in to play, where you say, you know what, I believe in you. I know you can do this. You have what it takes, and it's only by doing it and practicing and getting good at it that you're going to become great. So, we have great leaders on our team, and they practice this. They won't wait for a person to get to a super, super high rank. They're going to, if the person is just started and, is moving forward in their business, and showing that they're serious and all, then they're going to kind of put them a little more in the spotlight so that they practice these skills of communication, of getting their eyes seen by other people, and verbally using those skills to communicate to their team, so that shows some authority, and that builds confidence by doing that, and it gets rid of the jitters, and then they're not so stressed about doing Zoom calls or Zoom meetings, and it's all good, right?
And if you're a good leader, as you take one step behind, and like I mentioned, for the one step ahead, the one step behind is one step behind. You don't want to be so far behind in the beginning of those stages where you're empowering them to move. But eventually, you're called to step away. Because a leader's job is not to lead others forever, but to forge or form other leaders. So eventually you'll be called, and you will you'll have the wisdom to know when that time is. Looking at your team, different team members, you'll be like, you know what? With Joe over here, it's time for me to step away. That's the final leadership dance step away. So that's when you practically give them free reins to be the leader. They become leaders on their own strength and capabilities and talents and abilities. And when you have that wisdom, okay, you know what? He's become really, really good. He doesn't need me anymore. I'm just going to step away now and watch it. Watch the fruit of my investment in time and words and everything that I've invested in this person, to see them become the leader that I knew they could become. Because finally, I'm seeing the image pretty much formed. So the stepping away process is so powerful, because there's nothing more empowering for someone to know that their mentor, their leader, now sees them on the same footing.
Yeah.
So I remember John Maxwell said eventually he was talking, and he was talking about Andy Stanley. And he had mentored Andy Stanley for quite some time, and eventually he said, you know what, you don't need me anymore. Andy kept coming to him. He says, you know as much, if not more than I do. You don't need me anymore. You're fine. You're good. And that's when the leader recognizes, you know what, I've invested in you everything you need, and I'm stepping away now. I'll still be there if you want to talk. I'm not leaving you forever. But I'm stepping away because I know you're fully capable of handling this on your own. You've got this. That's the leader saying, you've got this. Way to go.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know who he is, he's the son of Charles Stanley, that has a big ministry, very well-known pastor. And Andy Stanley specializes in leadership, and he has his own leadership podcast you can find on Apple Podcasts, elsewhere as well. And so he teaches leadership in the church, and So that's really powerful what he just said. And I think there's a lot of dancing involved. And there's some people, like I said, they need to experience some reigns of leadership to build that confidence. And there's other people that are not confident enough just because they always are used to having their leader kind of looking above them and saying, okay, it's good, it's good. And they're always looking for that recognition and pat on the back and saying, okay, I know I'm doing the right thing. But that's why at one point it's important to step away, because that person is going to develop their own leadership traits, right? So everybody's made differently and they're going to add their own flavor. And I think that, especially in the home-based business industry, I think that this is something that leaders have a very hard time with, because there's a sequence to doing things, especially if you're in the sales niche, and leaders generally want everybody to do exactly the same process. And yes, there are things that we need to do to follow that are important to get the right results we want, but there's also sometimes, a creativity, innovation that's missing, that sometimes the leader won't have, and that by building these leaders, you're going to find different quality traits, different strengths that they have that they're going to add to the team that are different than you. And you won't discover those things unless you let them lead. So you're going to have to let them lead and step away and let them do their thing, and just be open-minded, because you're going to see, positivity. Don't forget, you've lifted them up, you've trained them, they know, what to do, and now's the time for them to shine and bring their own strengths and their own qualities. And that's what I believe makes a beautiful team, is to see all the different qualities and strengths. And that's one of the reasons that in a lot of businesses and a lot of network marketing businesses, sales, whatever, team building, there's a lot of rifts that happen, where when that person develops their own wings, let's say, becomes this eagle that wants to fly off the mountain by themselves, then the leader's like, no, you can't do it that way. So as long as you do it my way, you can stay in the team. But then now you want to do something a bit different, and I'm not comfortable with that. Go do it on your own team. And then there's a rift. And so you're going after building new teams, but basically what you want to do is clone yourself. You just want to create your own clone, and only the clones will stay a part of the team. And I think that that's losing flavor to a strong team. I think that I've seen really big thriving teams, and I can tell you every one of these leaders what their strengths are and what their qualities are, because they all shine differently. And that's only because the leaders were able to know when it was important for themselves to step back and let the person develop those strengths and qualities, all along applying the essentials of what they know to doing the business.
That's awesome. I love that. And here's another thing. When you see another leader that you've mentored come into their own and become a leader, and that you've stepped away and they shine now, if you're even wiser, if you go one step further, let's call it one step further, this thing, you can now learn from them, because they're gonna do things, like she said, differently. They're gonna do new things that maybe you never even considered. And they're going to say, hey, you know what, Sebastian, here's what I learned. You taught me this. I did it this way, and here's the result I got. And then you go like, oh, that's interesting. I think I'm going to try that. So that it becomes such an interesting thing when you see someone you've mentored become so good at what they do, so good in their own lane, that they can now teach you stuff.
Yeah.
That's the reward. That's the reward of the leadership dance, when it is properly applied, and when there's rhythm, when there's flow, when there's timing, and when you do it well. The ultimate reward is that you will now benefit from these relationships. They will add value to you.
Exactly. And I've seen, great mentors have leaders that they built actually accomplish even more than what they accomplished themselves. They actually excelled even more. And I think that's so rewarding to say that you had a part in that. And like Sebastian says, it's so important, because you're going to learn different things. That's going to help your business, because like I said, everybody has their own strengths. So, you might be building a leader that has a strength that you don't have, that's more of a weakness, and you're going to say, you know what, that makes a lot of sense to apply things this way.
Yeah.
That's going to help me as well. So don't be afraid to learn also from your leaders, because it's not because you've trained them into certain steps of the business that you're all high and mighty, that you can't learn from them as well.
Amen to that.
So I hope that this podcast has blessed you. I'd love to hear in the comments what you think of this topic. Have you experienced different things like that with your leaders? Have there been times where you just want to pull your hair out because people were leaving the team, and maybe some certain things we said resonated with you? Maybe there's things that you want to do differently, that you see differently. We'd love to hear your feedback. For those of you that aren't signed up to our email list, we send out our podcast every week. You can go to thrivingonpurpose.com and sign up to be part of our email list, where we send you our top nuggets and our podcasts. We've also just started the Top Kingdom Growth Group. So if you want to be part of that, you want us to see us on Facebook, we're part of that group. We created that group to help you, to teach you about deepening your faith, your walk with God, leadership, and personal growth. So it's really personal development for Christian entrepreneurs. So we'll post a link below from wherever you're tuning in, so that you can be part of that group.
And whatever you do, keep on dancing.
Be blessed.
And thrive on.